Hey there guys, it's JP here and I'll be doing, as you can see from my lovely backdrop, my first ever movie review, and I will be doing Disney's Cinderella. Now this is a movie I've actually watched twice. I actually really enjoyed this movie. Um, I'll give you my overall ratings of it near the end here. Let me just pull out some stats for you guys here. So Cinderella is obviously a Disney film. Currently it has a 7.6 rating out of 10 on IMDb out of 19,706 users, so that is really good score. In fact, one of the highest I've seen in a while. On Rotten, oh my goodness, on Rotten Tomato, they have an 85 uh, by the critics, 85% rating on by the critics, which I believe is the highest so far of this year. Let me just take a quick look here. Mm, yeah, I believe it is here. Let me just pull up one more just to make a comparison here. Yeah, it's actually has a higher rating than Kingsman: The Secret Service, which I didn't expect. Um, Personally, I do prefer Cinderella over the Kingsman, but I expected more people to like Kingsman more here. Having said that, though, audience score is 87, so it's tied with the Kingsman. Overall, I think it's the better movie is Cinderella, but that's just me. So let's move on here. Um, I'm going to break up this movie into two parts. First off is the back end, what I like to consider the back end, which is basically your anything that happens behind the camera. So the production side of the movie, and then we go on to the front end, which is basically the acting. All right. So for the back end, I'm going to start off with the director here because let's face it, this is the director's movie in a way, even though technically it's a producer's movie, but the director puts what is seen on the screen for all of us, right? So the director for Cinderella is or was I don't know the proper tense for this. Kenneth Branning. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name here. Um, let's Personally, I have no really bad opinions about his movie. I like his take on it. It's a really, oh my goodness, my dog is so loud. All right, so yeah, really well done by him. Personally, I like his style, his approach to this movie. Which is basically just to bring out the animated Cinderella into a real life kind of movie, right? Or rather, real life kind of situation, right? Make it real, and that's personally how I would like to see all the Disney movies being translated over to the film world. I know, like in the past, they've done things like Maleficent and Little Red Riding Hood, which is not really, it's not quite a Disney princess, but they like to take out these fairy tales and put a new twist on it, which I have not been a fan of. Personally, I know a lot of people liked Maleficent, they loved it, but I did not like it. I felt it was too far of a departure from the original story of Snow White, and um, you know, she's not even really an anti-hero, right? She's the hero of the movie Maleficent, which is kind of weird because her name itself means evil. Having said that, though, Cinderella is pretty faithful to the source material. There are a few minor plot points that they change, like how she's not really a damsel in distress kind of thing in this movie, as opposed to in the original. But those are small things. Yeah, personally, I think Kenneth Branagh nails hits the nail on the head here with his take on Cinderella. Uh, let's move on to the writer, the screenplay writer who was Chris White. Chris White is that am I saying that right? Either way, there's nothing much to comment about his writing here. Personally, like not personally, but objectively, right? It's basically the original story of Cinderella, just with plus minus a few points. So I have no complaints. My only complaint is that he probably was redundant in this film because of how little was changed. But having said that, though, he did need to visualize everything and put it down on paper so that the actors and actresses knew what to do. So kudos to him. But again, it's basically the original Cinderella, animated Cinderella brought to life. Let's move on to the animation, which I actually thought was the weakest part of this movie. Um, Personally, I thought it was kind of cheesy. The animation, it's a little too, I wouldn't say flamboyant, but it's a little too. Ironically, I want to use the word subpar. Right? Don't get me wrong. That scene where she, you know, where the fairy godmother, puts the dress on her, right? Transforms her old mother's dress into the blue one that we all know. That scene was actually really, really beautiful. But having said that, though, like some things like the lizard man and the rabbits and the mice looked a little bit fake at times. Um, but other than that, again, I have no real complaints about this movie here. As you can tell, I'm probably going to give this a really high rating here. Moving on, we have the score, which personally is one of my favorite parts of the movie. Right, I thought Patrick Doyle, who did Thor and a few other movies here, Thor is the one that sticks out to me the most recently. But let me just pull it up real quick here so that I can uh, name you a few more of his better pieces. Here. Thor is the one that sticks out to me just because that's the one that I've actually seen the most recently. Well, I'm sure he's done more. Yeah, so he did Harry Potter, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and Brave. So those are some really good scores here. Um, Personally, my other favorite one, other than don't get me wrong, Patrick Doyle is a really gifted composer. Uh, but my favorite piece from him would have to be this one, the Cinderella theme, which does use a little bit of that Lavender's Blue folk song. It incorporates a lot of the melody from that into his score, which I think is really nice because the melody of Lavender's Blue is a really nice song. Um, so um, yeah, I'm glad he used that. They actually do sing that song a little bit in the movie. I'm glad there's not a lot of singing in this movie though. Most of the singing is just like a little lullaby song from the parents to Cinderella and Cinderella humming it and singing it a little bit at the end. But it's not like, oh, every 5 minutes they're singing and dancing. I'm glad it wasn't like that. Having said that, though, let me just jump right back to Patrick Doyle here. His score is really amazing here. It really brings out the magical aspect of a movie. Personally, to me, the score either makes or breaks a movie, right? A really good score, I have, right? For every movie that I've watched, I notice the score. I'm like, I gotta have that score. I have the original Thor's score, done by Patrick Doyle himself. I have like things like Iron Man scores. Those are a little bit more outstanding one. Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park, Star Wars. I have those scores. I paid for the CDs. I have the CDs. I put them in my computer and in my MP3 and stuff. The score is really what makes this movie special, I think. Um, but yeah, let's just move on from the score. So I feel I've been ranting about that a little bit too much. Let's get on to the acting here, which is the front end. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna break this up. Let's just break this up into families, right? So we have three main families in this movie. The first one is the Step family, Cinderella's family, and the King's family. So let's go on to the King's family, being that the King's family is kind of a short list here. There's the King himself. Excuse me, I have an itch in my ear. Um, and as you can tell, it's raining outside. It's pretty dark. Um, Probably have to close the window soon, but we'll let it rain for a while. Right, so let's move on to the King's family. The Prince's family, the Prince being played by Richard Madden, and the King by, I think it was Derek Jacobi. Hold on, let me just look that up real quick here. Derek Jacobi, yeah. So, Derek Jacobi, I think, needs no introduction. He is a legend. He's just really good in everything he's in. So let's not go too much into that. He does. You don't see much of the king in this movie. As you all know, the king will not live too long here. He will pass on, and the prince will take over. Um, you will see a lot more of the prince, but honestly, the prince to me is one of the weakest part of this movie. Like his character seemed a little bit in a real life context, his character is a little off. Having said that, though, for the sake of this movie, being totally subjective to everyone, of course, and yet being objective for the sake of the movie, I think he was portrayed really well. He's pretty charismatic here. He brings out the charming Prince Charming, and his what do you call it? His connection here with the chemistry that he had here. Let me see if I can pull out an image here. There, that's a really big image here. Let me see if I can make that a little smaller here. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, his chemistry with Lily James in this movie, it's amazing, right? They really look really nice as a couple, and they do bring out the best of this movie. At least the more important parts of their love story in this movie, they bring it out really, really well here. Let's move on to the stepmother's family. Of course, the stepmother, we all know. This one's a smaller image. Let me see if I can make it bigger here. It's a little blurry, but there we go. The stepmother played by Kate Blanchett. Kate Blanchett, I think, again, needs no introduction here. She's an phenomenal actress. In case you're wondering what Jacoby looks like here, that's not right here. Sorry, I have to adjust this. So yeah, that's Derek Jacoby right there. This one, and that's the prince. So let's just move on back to this one here. All right, so Kate Blanchett, right? She needs no introduction. She's a phenomenal actress. She really does nail the stepmother in this movie. Having said that, though, she did get outshined in this movie, which is kind of rare thing for me to say. Um, but yeah, she did the best she could with a character that was pretty one-dimensional, right? Um, they did explain a lot about Cinderella here in this movie, why she is who she is and how she came to be and stuff. And they actually did put a little bit more effort into this film to explain more about the stepmother and why she became the way she did than I remember in the original Cinderella. Having said that, though, um, at times her character does fall a little flat, but she was amazing in it. Like she sold you, and she is absolutely stunning in this movie. Like when she puts on the dress and stuff, she does look like what you would expect from her. You know, she looks like a countess, like a duchess kind of character. She looks amazing. Her acting looks amazing, and she has the most amazing laugh in this movie. Like you guys should hear it, right? If you haven't watched Cinderella, please go and watch it. And just look out for her laugh, right? The laugh is amazing. Her stepdaughters, on the other hand, I think were probably the most annoying part of this movie. There's nothing much to say other than, well, don't get me wrong, they did a really good job here. You are supposed to not like these characters, right? They were mean and nasty to Cinderella, and they were pretty annoying here, and they pulled that off pretty well, in my opinion. Um, Personally, I think they actually did a better job than the prince himself, but that's a really really small uh, problem with the movie. So let's move on here. We have the last family in this movie, which is Ella's or Cinderella's family. We touched on Cinderella last year. Let's start off with the not so family member, not so blood related family member, the fairy godmother, played by Helen Bonham Carter, which it took me a while to actually recognize her in that movie for some reason. Um, Although she has proven time again that she is meant for this kind of quirky, out of this world kind of roles. Do I think this is her best performance? No, by far no. But don't get me wrong, she's really good in this role as well. Given the limited, very very limited time you can see her, and she does leave a little bit of impression on you. She would be, if I'm not mistaken, she narrates the whole movie, which is kind of nice because she has a really nice voice. But the acting itself, it is not up to her standard. But I think it again as an ensemble, everybody's really good in this movie. Let's move on to Cinderella's family members. We have the mom and dad, who, if you all know the story, Cinderella will not be around for very long, right? The dad is played by Ben Chaplin. Is it Chaplin? I think it was Ben Chaplin. And mother is played by Haley Atwell. the lady that plays the love interest for Captain America in the first Captain America movie. Um, there's nothing much to say about them just because you don't really get to see them very much. The dad seems a bit shallow at times. Like his character is not really too well defined. He just seems to be this really cheerful guy who, yay, yay, me, look at me, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm bringing back stuff for my daughter, blah, 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 that kind of thing, right? And then the mom, on the other hand, is very one dimensional in the sense that, oh, I love my daughter, I love my daughter, I love my daughter, and poof, she's gone, right? Kind of sad. That scene is pretty sad here. There's a scene where they're all hugging together. I thought that was a really beautiful scene. Um, Personally, I have no issues with the acting here as well. Like I said earlier, as an ensemble piece, in terms of like every single person involved in the movie, I thought everybody was outstanding. Which leads me up to the star of the movie, Lily James, who plays Cinderella. Now, Lily James herself, I'm not familiar with her work, right? I think she was in like Wrath of the Titans or something, but if you guys are like me, you don't even remember her in that movie. Having said that, though, I think this is probably a really, really good fit. Initially, when I looked at this, the first movie poster for Cinderella, which is her like, standing and prancing with her blue dress flowing up back, I thought that doesn't look like Cinderella. I don't like this. Um, but you know what? I gave the movie a shot, and I watched it. Well, to be fair, it was on my to watch list anyways. So I watched the movie Cinderella, and you know what? I totally bought it. I thought she made an outstanding Cinderella. She was really, really good as Cinderella. In fact, like I mentioned earlier, she was the one who outshined Kate Blanchett. I thought this was her movie. She owned the role. She looked really good actually as Cinderella, despite my initial impressions of her. Of course, her picture is a little different than seeing on screen. And on screen, she really did shine. She did mask a bit of her natural accent, I believe. Um, but having said that, though, yeah, at times the character may seem a bit naive, but I I don't think naive is the appropriate word to use here. It's innocent, right? Cinderella, it has always been described as this really innocent girl, and has always been portrayed as such. And Lily James actually manages to bring that out really well in this movie. I think I'm not gonna go as far to say she's the next Jennifer Lawrence or the next Meryl Streep, but this is a really good role for her. I think she brought out the best she could. She really did bring out the emotion in Cinderella, and within like the first few moments of looking at her as Cinderella, you're totally convinced that she is Cinderella. Um, so yeah, that'll be all for my character review here. Let me just go over some stats real quick here about how much it's made in the box office and whether you guys should go and watch it here. Currently, I believe I'm just so you know, I'll put the links to where I get all my sources here. Currently, Cinderella 2015 has made a total of 268 million in the global box office. Uh, I, I'm actually really surprised it's this low. This is by far the best movie I've seen this year, including Kingsman, right? Which is not going to be a popular thing to say. I know a lot of people get worked up about that, but personally, this is just my own opinion. I think Cinderella, as of so far, is going to be the best movie. Is the best movie I've seen this year. Granted, there are a lot of movies yet to be released, and granted I will not be watching every single movie that is being released this year. I'll just be watching the more mainstream ones and a couple of indie films when I have the time, right? Uh, I do have a top 10 to watch movie list earlier uh, this year, so you guys can see that Cinderella is one of them. And so don't get too worked out if your favorites are not on my top 10. Um, to watch movies just because everybody's list is going to be a little bit different. Um, but yeah, Cinderella, great movie. I'm going to give my overall impression, which I mentioned over and over in this review. I thought it was an amazing movie. And I'm gonna give this movie a solid, I guess, 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. It was a beautiful ensemble piece, a really beautiful movie. If you guys want to bring your girls out on a date, this is a really good date movie, if you ask me. Just because it has a bit of a romantic feel to it and stuff. Having said that, though, I'm going to end this video in a bit. I highly recommend that you guys go out and watch this movie here. Personally, like I said, it's my personal favorite movie of the year so far, and I can't describe it anymore here. Go and check out this movie and let me know what you guys think here. That will be all for me for my first ever movie review, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Do leave some feedback in the comments below and let me know what you thought about the movie and stuff. And yeah, that'll be all for me. This is JP signing up.